Welcome to episode 35 of the Yes You Coaching podcast. I'm your host and the founder of Yes You Coaching, Anna Manning. And today we're going to be talking about how you can grow your confidence in 2023. So, if you were one of the many hundreds of people, there were hundreds of people who I trained in January and spilling on into February, I was teaching and training on a particular class which was called Grow Your Confidence in 2023. And hundreds of people went through that training. It was brilliant. But one particular week when I did like 5 of the trainings, I realized way too tiring doing 5 trainings in 1 week. But we live and learn. If you were one of the people that went through that, consider this a nice recap. Stay with us and recap some of the things that you learned in that class so they sink slightly further in. If you didn't come with us in one of those classes, here is your chance to kind of get under the skin of what we were talking about, what we were thinking about, and all the stuff that I shared with people about how you can grow your confidence in 2023. And I sometimes think twice about sharing all of this stuff that I do, because obviously people pay me to work with me one-on-one. They pay me to work with me in programs. They pay me to come and deliver training and workshops for their, themselves, their teams, their networks, etc. And sometimes I'm like, should I just tell them all the information? And then I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna tell you all the information. I know so much at this point about how the actual stuff you need to do in order to build your confidence from coaching hundreds of people to do just that. And I'm in that privileged position where I have been coaching on confidence now for 5 years. So I see the same behaviors, the same patterns, the same themes coming out again and again and again and again. And I think it would be remiss of me not to share those with you, because you can like cut out some of the hard work that I've done in sitting there for all those hours, even though I love sitting there for all those hours. This is literally my jam, but I distill that learning that I get from sitting in front of people, listening to the same habits, the same patterns, the same behaviors when their confidence is lower. And then when we get them to a place where their confidence is higher. And that's what this class was aiming to do. This class was aiming to help people create their own plan to go from being less confident to more confident. And it was an actual practical plan. Like, this isn't pie in the sky, like woo-ha, woo-hoo, like fluffy. This is like actual plan stuff. So, without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And the reason that I was teaching this class is because I hear over and over again from so many people, and from all the people that I work with, I know logically that I'm good at my job, but I don't feel as confident as I would like. And a lot of people are confused as to why that would be. Like, they are perplexed most of the time. Like, I don't know what's going on and I don't know how to fix it. And in this podcast episode, in under 30 minutes, it's ambitious, but bear with me. I'm going to show you what is going on that you're not as confident as you want to be, and how you can start fixing it. If you want to do the work with me to be supported by my expertise as you fix it, come and work with me. If not, you can just listen to this episode of the podcast, work out what you're doing, which is creating less confidence, and how you need to fix it. So, after coaching hundreds of people to grow their confidence, I saw the same patterns happening again and again and again. And I pulled out all of those patterns and I put them down into what are the things that I see happening when someone's confidence is lower, and what are the things that I see happening when someone's confidence is higher. And I call those the low confidence cycle and the high confidence cycle. And there's actually a podcast back in the, I don't know what episode it is. You'll have to find it. But there's a low confidence and a high confidence cycle podcast, which takes you through these things. And the low confidence cycle, I see people managing themselves pretty poorly. So what we're talking about here is the behaviors, the habits, the patterns that we use with and for ourselves. So all of us know that if we were working in an environment which was critical and judgy and demanding and difficult, it would probably have an impact on our confidence. Most of the time, for most of us, we can't actually control our external environment. We might try and we might be able to have an influence on it, but it's extremely difficult. What we can control more easily is our internal environment. And that's what I'm talking about during this podcast. So, all the behaviors, all the habits, all the thinking patterns, all the ways of doing things I'm talking about are our own internal habits. And if you like, that's creating a internal culture that we work in. So we know we want to work in an external culture, which is supportive and encouraging and respectful and all the rest of it. And that's great. And I hope for most of you that you do. But this low confidence cycle and the high confidence cycle is identifying the part of your internal culture, i.e., the way you handle, manage, and deal with things internally that have an impact on your confidence. And believe me, you can be excellent at your job in an excellent external culture, so you can be supported, helped, encouraged, and be really good at your job and still feel like you've got no confidence whatsoever because your internal way of managing yourself, your internal culture is terrible. So some of the things that would be contained within your internal culture are you self-critical? Do you have a lot of unmanaged self-doubt? Are you focusing on how you're being perceived and judged by other people? Are you having to kind of fake it, right? Fake it till you make it. It's part of the low confidence cycle. It's faking it, hiding yourself, and being unable to be yourself. Are you providing emotional support to yourself on difficult days, or are you just shoving it down and expecting yourself to get on with it? And what are your standards like? What are the standards that you require of yourself? Are you someone who says it's perfect or nothing? I have to be perfect and everything I do has to be perfect. This might be you or it might not. But this is definitely part of the low confidence cycle. When I see people giving themselves unreasonable expectations, unreasonable standards, demanding that they be perfect in so many environments where it just isn't possible, and some of the time it just isn't necessary. Yes, some of the time it probably is, but some of the time it isn't. And that would be contributing to this low confidence cycle. What that means is you're then going to struggle to tolerate any failures, any mistakes, and any setbacks. And they happen in all of our careers, all of the time. But how you handle them when they do makes a big difference. So imagine if you were in an environment where you were constantly criticized, constantly reminded of the mistake that you made. Oh, do you remember that mistake you made last week, Anna? Yeah, I just thought I'd remind you of it every day and tell you what an idiot you were. You would hate it if somebody did that to you at your workplace, but you're probably doing that to yourself in your own head. And it's creating the same result. It's eroding your confidence. And then we have comparison, which is usually negative, right? You think, oh, everyone else seems to be managing just fine. Everyone else seems to have control of this. Everyone else seems to be able to manage everything. It's just me that can't. Therefore, I am defected or flawed or whatever. And that lowers and erodes confidence further. And it isn't even true. You just don't see the inside of everybody else's head. I do. And I can tell you that everyone has their struggles and their challenges. Of course they do, because we're all human and we're working in imperfect world, in imperfect workplaces with lack of resource and stress and all the rest of it, right? Of course, not everybody has it all perfectly together, but when you're thinking that, it can be very damaging to your confidence. And then the next pillar is around a failure to acknowledge good work. This is part of this low confidence cycle. So a focus on the negatives and forgetting about the positives. Do you micro focus on anything that went wrong and kind of skip over anything that went right? No, our brains are wired to do this. But if you're always doing that, it will be having an impact on your confidence. You might be one of those people who's like, I need someone to tell me that I'm doing a good job, or I just don't know whether I'm doing a good job. And maybe I just assume that I'm not. And if you're always needing somebody else to tell you you're doing a good job and you can't kind of do that validation for yourself, you're completely reliant on somebody else doing that validation for you. Now, they may do it, but they may not. And for most of us, when we get more senior, what we find is that that validation doesn't come very readily. You're not going to be getting great feedback and praise from people all the time. Probably people are just coming to you with problems and concerns. And the last thing is around a refusal to give yourself acknowledgement or praise for the good work that you've done. You probably give feedback and acknowledgement to other people because it's motivating and it's encouraging and it boosts their confidence. But if you're never getting that from yourself, what's boosting your confidence? What's motivating you? When we flip all of those things on their head, we get a high confidence cycle. And when I'm working with someone one-on-one or taking them through a program, I'm helping them to identify every part of that low confidence cycle that I've just whipped through, which is relevant to them. And you probably, as I went through that list, clocked any part of that low confidence cycle which is relevant to you. And clock it you should. Because anything that you can identify with on that list will be eroding your confidence, even if you're really good at your job. So if you're not as confident as you want to be, take a moment and identify anything in that list that you can, that you identify with. Anything in that list we just went through that resonates with you. Because that is some of the stuff you are going to have to fix if you want to increase your confidence in 2023. So we have a low confidence cycle, right? But we also have a higher confidence cycle, and it flips that low confidence cycle on its head. It basically does the opposite of all of those things that we just talked through. So the poor self-management becomes, I know how I need to be managed in order to be at my most confident, and that is how I manage myself. And this is like the golden nugget that you need to know. If somebody were to say to me, what is the secret? How do you work with people to increase their confidence? It's simply this: manage yourself differently. That's it. It's literally as simple as that. All of those bits of the low confidence cycle that I just went through are essentially how you're managing yourself internally. Not how you're being managed by other people, but how you're managing yourself. And if you want to grow and maintain your confidence, all you have to do is manage yourself differently. You want to look at all of those ways in which you're managing yourself, become cognizant of them, because trust me, most of them will be unconscious. You will not really even be aware that you're doing them. And I bet you never decided that's how you were going to manage yourself. It's just unconsciously developed patterns and habits over time. And then here you are. The first thing you have to do when you're thinking about any kind of behavior change is make what's currently unconscious conscious. Know how you are managing yourself. Have that in black and white in front of you, and then work out how you want to do it differently. And a really easy way of working out how you're managing yourself, I'm going to show you an exercise in this podcast so that you can go through it. And it's quite easy, but it takes the external and it brings it internal. But back to the high confidence cycle. So when you know how you need to be managed and you're managing yourself in that way, that is going to be the best way for you. And I can't prescribe exactly what that needs to be like for you. The most powerful thing is that if you If you know how you need to be managed and you know how somebody would approach you if they were going to get the best out of you, if you were going to be at your most confident, if you were going to be at your most effective at work, how would somebody else be managing you? How would somebody be leading you? That's how you need to be leading yourself. And that's going to be slightly different for everyone because we're all coming at our careers and our jobs and our roles with different hearts and with different minds and with different nervous systems and with different sensitivities. And all of us have, well, who we are is someone different for all of us. But for all of us, there is a way in which somebody could manage or lead us, which would get the best out of us. Would it get out of us perfection? No. But it would allow us to be at our most confident, at our most effective. And that's what you need to think about. And for most people, that includes things like being able to recognize and manage their inner critic, right? More kindness, more respect in terms of that inner voice. It means being able to manage self-doubt, to do check and challenge on the self-doubt that you do have, and then be able to handle self-doubt that comes up because it's inevitable with some confidence. It's about working out where you're inadvertently putting the pressure on yourself and then reducing that pressure so that your brain can be clearer and calmer and you're not under such a stress reaction when you're trying to do things. For most people, it's about being able to focus on what they're doing and where they are and being present rather than being in their head and ruminating and worrying and focusing on how they're being perceived. And for most people, it's being able to provide themselves with the kind of emotional support that they would want from somebody else when they're having a bad day, because bad days are going to happen. But it's about how you look after yourself and how you care for yourself when those bad days do happen. So that's the start of managing yourself differently. And then when you think about the standards that you want to set, what kind of standard would you want somebody else to set for you? A completely unrealistic standard? A perfect standard? Or would you want somebody to understand that it was impossible to be perfect? Do you need you to understand that it's impossible to be perfect? How would you manage yourself if you'd made a mistake or you'd had a failure or a setback? Would you be constantly reminding yourself of it and telling yourself you're an idiot? Or would you be respectful and gentle and look at what had happened and allow you the time and space to do some reflection and some learning in a non-punitive environment? And then would you be endlessly criticized and reminded of the mistake you'd made? No. You'd be allowed to learn from it and you'd be allowed to move on. That might be how you need to manage yourself in order to be at your most confident, because mistakes are going to happen. They're completely inevitable. But how you handle them is up to you. And then comparison. Would somebody be constantly comparing you to someone else? Oh, look at Becky over there. She's managed to do it perfectly. And how haven't you managed it? No, of course not. You wouldn't want to be in that environment. How would somebody be managing you around comparison? Would they just straight up not do it? I don't think I'd want to be compared to other people in that kind of negative way. I don't think it would do anything good for me. I don't think it would get the best out of me. And maybe that's the same for you. But you know what I would want, how I would want to be managed, would be somebody giving me acknowledgement for the good work that I'd done and noticing things. I did a scuba diving thing recently. I'd never done it before. And I was quite nervous. And the teacher was a bit, well, it was a bit mardy, to be honest. And we were going to do 2 45-minute dives. And after the first one, he said to me, "Oh, your trimming was really good." Well, I had no idea what trimming meant, to be honest. But apparently it's like the way you hold yourself in the water and the way you make little adjustments to hold yourself in the water. And when he said that, I was like, "Oh." And it like boosted me and it boosted my confidence. And I was like, "Oh, my trimming's really good." Didn't even know what it meant. But it was really helpful. And it helped me to do the second dive feeling more confident. I was like, "My trimming's good." So if you know that you like acknowledgement and you like to be recognized for the good stuff that you've done, and it doesn't always happen from the outside, you need to start being able to do it for yourself. Creating that environment on the inside of acknowledgement and praise, because it's easy to focus on the negatives. Our brains are wired to do that. It's harder to focus on the positives, but if you want to be feeling confident, if you want to increase your confidence and maintain it, you need to be able to do that. And you need to be able to notice what you've achieved and how you've progressed, just like you'd want somebody else to. So that's those low confidence and high confidence cycles. And I often ask my clients, like, what kind of boss or environment would you need in order to create like a 10 out of 10 style confidence? And most people find it pretty easy to tell me. They know instinctively, like you probably know instinctively, what kind of environment do you need to work in to be at your best, to be at your most confident, to be at your most effective, even on the days where things aren't great or something goes wrong. And in the class, I led the participants through an exercise designed to kind of really tease that out. So we went through various different prompts and headings like, if there are any issues, my boss should ... what? When it comes to giving feedback, my boss should what? If I made a mistake, I would want my boss to what? Regarding the standards that are expected of me, my boss should ... what? I expect my boss to speak to me with, and think about it, all of the time I'm prompting people to think, to be at your most confident and at your most effective at work. What would your boss be doing? How would they be managing you? How would they be leading you? How would they be supporting you? It's really easy to do this exercise when we think about it from the outside. And once we've thought about it from the outside, we turn it inside. All of those things that you've identified that you would want your boss to do in order to be at your most confident and at your most effective and to keep you motivated and doing your best work is the stuff you actually want also from yourself. You can't control what your boss does, unfortunately. You cannot control the external environment. You cannot control the culture you work in. Yes, you might be able to have an impact on it because all of us do. But ultimately, you are not in control of that. What you are in control of is the internal environment that you're working in. And that internal environment can erode your confidence or it can build your confidence. And after coaching hundreds of people, I have seen what erodes people's confidence and what builds people's confidence. And when we work one-on-one or in a program, I'm not helping them to change what's happening on the outside. I'm not helping them to change other people or the structures or any of that. Okay, some of that might change. I'm helping people to change what's going on the inside. I'm helping them to change their internal culture. So they are working within an internal culture which is consistent with them feeling supported and encouraged and confident. I am helping them to manage themselves differently. And when they do that, amazing things start to happen. And this confidence problem that they thought was so out of their control becomes something that they get to decide on and that they get to work on, and something that is in their control. That internal environment is the one thing that is in their control. And once they know how they want to be managed and they have defined that, they then work on creating an internal culture which is softer for some people, is easier on them when they make a mistake, is less pressurized and less stressful and more supportive and more encouraging and more understanding and more respectful. That looks slightly different for everyone, and it will look slightly different for you. But you need to know what kind of internal culture you want to work in, and then you need to go about creating it. And yes, it takes practice and it takes intention. Just like any kind of behavior change, you have neural pathways in your brain which mean that you do things in a certain way. You think of things in a certain way, you have certain habits, you have certain behaviors, you have certain ways of thinking about things. But what we know is that your brain is constantly rewiring, and you can rewire your brain from an internal culture, which is horrible, to an internal culture, which is way better. I know it works because I've done it with so many people. And it's just science. It's just neuroscience. They know that you can form new neural connections with practice and with intention, and that eventually your brain will prune off the old ones. And I know for me that I used to have a terrible internal environment, hideous. And it had an effect on my confidence. And I know that now I have a really good internal environment. Is it perfect? No. But it's really good. It's supportive. It's encouraging. It's understanding. 97% of the time, I would say. And that's allowed me to do so much more in my life. But I also know that those old habits don't happen in the way that they used to. The old patterns that I used to use, I don't really even have to think about anymore, because my new habits have taken over now. My new ways of thinking, my new ways of doing things, my new behaviors. And that can be exactly the same for you. It takes some time and it takes intention, but it's possible. So that's how you can grow your confidence in 2023. And if you want to work with me to do that, you can come and work with me one-on-one. You can come and work with me as part of the Confident at Work program. This one is just for women, but we start in April. And that does teaching and coaching to take you from being less confident to being more confident. You can also hire me to come and do training or workshops around this stuff for you or your team. If you've been listening to this today and thinking, oh yeah, that's me, then just know that you can do something about it. Whether you just use the stuff in this podcast or come to one of my free classes, or whether you come and work with me one-on-one, this is within your control. This is stuff you can do something about. This is stuff that you can fix. Your brain isn't different than anyone else's. All right, that's what I've got for you today. I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.